What's your favorite scary movie?
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
That the power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Here's Johnny!
I see dead people.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
It's showtime.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Terror Talks. I'm your host, Jeremy, and we've got a fabulous episode for you guys today. But first, we just want to say thank you guys for being patient with us as we work to get more and more content out all the time. I know it has been a little while since we've posted. We've been going through a lot of different things, work-related, work changes. We did some traveling, and unfortunately, I was one of the unlucky ones who actually caught COVID while traveling as well. First time I caught it, luckily it wasn't a major brush with the virus, so I was very happy that it was as minor as it was. But it did take me a little bit of time to reacclimate to everyday life, get used to doing things again, and not to mention that I got the virus while I was on vacation on top of that. So I was actually stranded. Well, not stranded, but I was out of town for an extended week. So because of that, I was not able to get new content out, was not able to experience a lot of things to even talk about on the show. So I'm just thrilled to be back, thrilled to be getting some content out. You know, it has been a long time coming, it seems like. It has been a minute since we have posted anything, so I'm happy to get back on the horse, get things going again. So, today's episode is going to be all about Stranger Things 4. So this is the long-awaited season. We waited a long time for this season, y'all. It was about, I think, 2 or 3 years just about since we saw season 3. And after the epic conclusion to season 3, many were left wondering, when will 4 come out? And the Duffer Brothers, you know, they promised big promises for season 4. And so far, I'm impressed. I'm having a good time. And we finally were able to get a glimpse of season 4 and then an official date. And we are finally here. It is finally premiered. And we're actually doing things differently, much like they're doing things a little differently. You know, we haven't covered the rest of the Stranger Things franchise here on the show, but it is something that we have covered a lot on our social media. We have teased a lot about season 4 and talked about it. You know, we had a big countdown thing going. So, you know, we are very engrossed in it. And this really is a horror sci-fi type show. So we feel that it is very much appropriate to discuss it here on the show. And one of the things you'll notice this season with Stranger Things is they're dividing it up into parts, part 1 and part 2. Granted, part 1 is much longer than part 2. At least it seems that way. I suppose if you really tied it all down and, you know, stacked it all together, it wouldn't really be that crazy. But we're getting 7 episodes for part 1 and only 2 episodes for part 2. Now, my understanding of this is all the episodes in part 1, they range from anywhere to about an hour to an hour and a half. So that's what you're looking at for each episode in the first half. But the second half, that's where the big change comes. I believe episode 8, if I saw correctly, is going to be an hour and 45 minutes. And then the finale episode, episode 9, I believe, will be 2 hours and 40 minutes. So we're talking feature-length film times here, which is really unheard of for this show, but I have a very good feeling about what they're doing, how they're doing it, so I think it's going to be worth the wait. But because they have divided it this way, one of the things that I'm doing as I watch the series, the season 4, I am pacing myself with each episode, so I'm only watching a little bit at a time. So, for example, I just watched 1 and 2. I'm going to take a little break, then do 3, maybe 3 and 4 together, and just sort of break it up into parts so that way I don't watch all of the episodes before the final one or the final two come out. I don't want to be, waiting for an entire month. I know some people have already binged it. So if you are one of those people and you have already binged the entire, season 4, part 1, feel free to keep listening. Or if you don't even want to hear what I have to say, I mean, that's fine too. But I'm just glad you're here. So we're going to not waste any more time. We're just going to jump in. As I said, we have already watched episodes 1 and 2 of Stranger Things 4. So we're going to break down both of those episodes. We've got some questions and some things we want to talk about. We've got new characters, returning characters. We've got the works here. So let's start off with episode 1 entitled The Hellfire Club, directed and written by the Duffer Brothers. In a flashback to 1979, Dr. Brenner is shown to be experimenting on several other children possessing supernatural abilities until a mysterious incident kills all of the children except 11, which Brenner blames 11 for. In 1986, 6 months following the events at Starcourt Mall, Joyce, Will, Jonathan, and 11 have moved to California, where 11 struggles with the loss of her powers and is routinely bullied by other students. Joyce receives a porcelain doll in the mail, seemingly from Russia, and finds a hidden note stating that Hopper is alive. In Hawkins, Mike and Dustin have joined their high school's Hellfire Club, a Dungeons & Dragons themed society led by the eccentric Eddie Munson. As a result, they miss seeing Lucas win the basketball team's championship game. Max, who has broken up with Lucas, struggles to grieve Billy's death. Chrissy Cunningham, a student on the cheerleading team, is haunted by visions of her family and a ticking grandfather clock. While buying drugs from Eddie, Chrissy is possessed and killed by a sentient humanoid creature from her visions. So a lot to unpack just in that short little synopsis we have of the episode. This is like a bare bones type of breakdown of things. So let's just start from the very beginning here. We meet Dr. Brenner. We see Dr. Brenner again. Many have speculated, is he really dead? Is he still out there? I, for one, we didn't see a body back in season 1. And I honestly feel like they wouldn't bring him back in the capacity that they have brought him back unless there was some inkling that he may be alive, because they're sort of setting up an interesting story, an interesting arc for him and 11, because as we see in this first little bit here, he is talking to the different experiments, if you will, or children, however you want to call them, and he's very nurturing towards them. It's not like a science experiment, guinea pig sort of deal. He's being very kind. He's talking to them. He, honestly, if you'll excuse the expression, he sounds like a proud papa to them. As 11 calls him papa, and they all, call him papa. But he is very kind to them. It's not the Brenner we saw in season 1 who just seems to be this ruthless person who essentially wants to destroy 11. Now, I think we sort of get a little bit of backstory here. Well, we definitely get some backstory when we see that all of these kids have been senselessly slaughtered. And I'm just going to give a little shout out here to Netflix and the team. I think they did a beautiful, very tasteful job of putting a warning at the beginning of this episode just to, warn people, of the fact that we are going to see children in a very dark capacity. And they did it very tastefully with the timing of the tragedy that occurred in Texas. So hats off to Netflix for doing that. I commend you for that. I think that was very tasteful and a very smart thing to do, and just good on you. Thank you for that. I think everyone can certainly appreciate that warning and just making sure that we are aware of what we're getting ourselves into in this episode, or at the very least in the first few minutes of the episode. So thank you. So we see this senseless tragedy here, and Brenner, as it says, blames 11, or supposedly blames 11. All we really hear him say is, "What have you done?" And, that who's to say what he means by that, or what happens in the time following that. We don't know. This is back in 1979. So, we don't have all of the information, so to speak. There's probably a lot more that happens. And I have a funny feeling, without having gone forward yet, I think we're going to see some more of this. I think we're going to get a deeper dive into this. So that's how the whole episode starts. You know, you get the amazing opening credits with the Stranger Things logo. Such a good sound and sight to see that again. And especially just, you know, it's amazing the slight addition of the new number because it's 4 now instead of 3. The little things just, they make the hair on your arm stand up, give you goosebumps. Fantastic. So we have our main crew. We've got Joyce, Will, Jonathan, 11. They're in California. And as we said, 11 is routinely being bullied. And we actually get to see some of her bullies in this capacity. And let me tell you, her bully's a jerk. So one of the characters that we get to meet, a new character, is named Angela, played by Elodie Grace Orkin. This girl, if you'll pardon the expression, is a bitch. She is so mean to 11, and I just want to reach through the screen and just bitch slap this girl because she is horrible. She is just rotten. She's the typical high school girl drama queen who's trying to start problems with all the different people. And of course, they make the person that we're all rooting for seem like a horrible person and make her look bad. So we get to see these struggles that are occurring, and 11 in her scene is writing a letter to Mike and telling him, you know, what's going on and all that. But she lies to him. Figures there. I'm curious to see where that storyline goes because I still don't know at this point. But she lies to him about it, and you know, who's to say what Mike's gonna do when he finds out? Not gonna be too good. We also have Jonathan and Will. Will is just being Will. Not, you know, he was always a character where you don't get a lot of substance with him. So I'm hoping we get some more with him. We see later in this episode, Mike actually comes to California to visit 11 for spring break. And instantly we see this sort of 3-wheel sort of thing happening where 11 and Mike are being all lovey-dovey and hanging out, but Will's just sort of the third wheel there. And you can see a sort of jealousy. And so that's a very interesting dynamic. I'm very curious to see how that plays out. Jonathan has a new friend named Argyle, played by Eduardo Franco, who, for lack of a better word, is a stoner. And he is actually a great character. He's got some awesome comedic relief, I think. And it's almost like the yin to the yang for Jonathan. Like, he's his friend, he's his confidant, and we actually see this sort of paralleled not just with Jonathan, but we also see it with Nancy back over in Hawkins, which is a very interesting sort of dynamic. Very fun, lots of great stuff happening there. Then over in Hawkins, like we said, we had Mike and Dustin. They've joined the Hellfire Club. And we get to meet Eddie Munson, who is played by Joseph Quinn. Love him so far. He is such a character. And I can tell he's going to be a big character this season, especially with the conclusion of episode 1 leading into episode 2, which we'll dive into that very shortly here. You know, we get to see this whole dynamic of Lucas kind of separating from his friends. Now, they claim he's still part of the Hellfire Club himself, but you can tell his loyalty lies with the basketball team and, you know, winning the game and being a somebody, being a part of the popular crowd. And I'll be honest, I've never liked the Lucas character because he's always trying to do the opposite of everybody else. He's always trying to break away from the group, like he just wants no part of it. And that always irritated me about his character because I rewatched the whole series before season 4 came out. And he did it in season 1. Like, he was horrible in season 1. Like, as soon as 11 came into the picture, he was on his merry way. And he's sort of doing that again here in this season by wanting to be popular, be with the basketball team. Yeah, and he gets his shot of fame and fortune, if you will, during the basketball game because he actually shoots the winning basket while Mike and Dustin are off at the Hellfire Club doing their campaign with probably one of the greatest comebacks in the entire series, a character we were all hoping would return. Erica Sinclair is back. She became a fan favorite in season 2 when she was just a minor character. Season 3, she became an even bigger character. And now Season 4, she's back. She's better than ever. She's a series regular. Erica Sinclair, played by Priya Ferguson. Oh my God, I love her. She is so funny and so witty and so awesome. And so I'm so glad to see her back. And so Mike and Dustin actually recruit her to fill Lucas's place at the Hellfire Club's Dungeons and Dragons campaign. And she ends up shredding Eddie Munson and being just an absolute driving force. So that's pretty awesome. So finally, we have, well, first off, we have Max, who is going through some serious crap with the death of her brother Billy, which I've already seen some theories out there that maybe Billy's not quite dead, or, some interesting theories, which we'll maybe dive into a little bit later. But she is struggling with the death that she experienced with him in Season 3. We see her, she's very zoned out. Like, every time we see her, she's got headphones on, keeping to herself. She gets in a fight with Lucas at one point and has a very heated conversation. And Lucas, as always, being the jerk that he can tend to be, says something to her along the lines of, find something else to care about. And it's like, oh my God, her brother died. And you're going to say something like, oh, he is not anybody's best friend right now. I'll tell you that much right now. But Max is having a very tough time with the loss of her brother. She's going through it. We see her going to a counselor. And of course, as often is the case with our main characters in these shows, she lies to the counselor. The counselor asks if the dreams have gone away, if the headaches have gone away. None of which is true, because she tells her, yeah, they've all gone away. We're good. Yeah, everything's fine. Truth be told, Max is sitting there popping Tylenol, I think. It's Tylenol or ibuprofen, whatever. Something to cure the headaches constantly. We see it very often in this first two episodes. So finally, we come across Chrissy Cunningham, who doesn't get to join us for very long. She's played by the wonderful Grace Van Dien. Wonderful girl. She nailed it in the scenes that she's in. I'm hoping maybe we get to see her in some capacity, maybe in a flashback sense later on down the road of the show. I'm hoping. I don't know if it's actually going to happen that way. But it'd be nice to see her sort of come back in that capacity, just because I feel like we didn't get enough of her. And a part of me is sort of hoping she's not dead. So this girl is having some seriously weird issues. We see her well, first of all, she's dating the basketball star Jason Carver, played by Mason Dye. And very early on, we see him tell her she loves him and all the, oh, they're in love, wonderful. But then a little bit later, we see her coming out of the guidance counselor's office crying. Then we see her in the bathroom throwing up. I don't know. We never get anything divulged in this episode or episode 2 about why she was throwing up. We don't really, get anything from that. Max tries to knock on the stall. She doesn't respond to that. So I don't know what's going on. Instantly, when I saw, cheerleader throwing up in the bathroom, coming out of the guidance office crying, instantly I'm thinking teen pregnancy sort of deal. And I'd like to say that's a possibility. I think maybe we'll find that out a little bit later. But it is not something that is mentioned in the first episode, so it's very curious. But when she is in the bathroom, she has this weird flashback vision to what I can only assume is her childhood, where I guess she was, quote unquote, a bigger girl, and her mom was basically fat shaming her and talking about, I'll make the dress fit you or whatever, and just getting really angry. And then all of a sudden, this door is being banged on. Like, it's real intense. It's real creepy. So she actually meets up with Eddie earlier in the woods, and, she wants to buy drugs from him. Well, the first meeting goes pretty nicely. They have a wonderful callback to their childhood. It's great, and I'm hoping maybe we get to see how her death really affects Eddie in the coming episodes, because we see this very vulnerable moment, and then next thing you know, she goes back to him a little bit later for quote unquote something stronger, as she puts it. And while she's there getting stronger drugs from him, that's when she goes into this almost I don't even know what the word to describe it is, ghost-like state. Like she's in another world, and like her body is just there, but she's not. And that's how she dies. She is in the mysterious house of Victor Creel, which we will, again, something else we'll dive into a little bit later because I haven't even learned all the facts of that yet. But the visions are haunting her again in this sort of ghost-like state that she's in. And it's really weird. And then next thing you know, we meet the creature Vecna, which is what, they dub him based on Dungeons and Dragons, because, they name all their creatures and whatnot off of Dungeons and Dragons things. So they come across this Vecna creature, and he essentially kills her. And he kills her in probably one of the, I have to be honest here, a great kill and a great callback to classic horror. One of the things I read when I was reading up about season 4 and what we could expect was the Duffer Brothers took a lot of inspiration from like the classic 80s horror villains. So Freddy Krueger and Pinhead, and there were several others that were mentioned, but those are like the two main ones that I remember. And the way they kill Chrissy is almost a verbatim sort of kill how they did Nightmare on Elm Street when they killed one of the first characters in that. The girl gets lifted up in the air and dragged around the room. In this case, she doesn't get dragged around the room, but Eddie does witness her get dragged in the air and then her bones crack. And it's like literally the most beautiful homage to Nightmare on Elm Street. And what makes it even better is Robert Englund is actually in season 4 of Stranger Things. Now, I have not seen him yet in the show. I haven't gotten to that point yet, so I don't know where he's going to come up. I'm assuming maybe episodes 3, 4, 5, but I haven't seen him yet. And then, like we said, I'm very excited that, like, right out the gate, we got Joyce receiving the porcelain doll and learning that Hopper is indeed alive. But she doesn't quite know all the details there. But immediately when she receives this package, she sees the Russian stamps, and she calls everyone's favorite character, Murray Bowman, played by Brett Gelman. I'm not sure if I said his name right. Wonderful character, awesome comic relief, always got a bottle in his hand. I love him, I love him, I love him. So we've got a lot of great characters that are here now, who have returned, who are here to create new legacies, and a lot of questions we want to get answered. One of them being, like, right off the bat, who is Vecna and what is Vecna? Because we're actually going to see Vecna again in the next episode when we get into episode 2, but I'm going to put that on hold for a minute. I'm not going to jump into that quite yet. But I'm very curious who Vecna is and what exactly he is. But I can already tell, just from what we've seen, that this is not going to be any villain they've faced before. This is going to be a tough one to beat, and it's going to be rough on our team from Hawkins, especially with poor 11 not having her powers. And that's another big question I have for this season. Are we going to see her powers come back, and in what capacity? One of the interesting theories I've seen so far is that maybe 11 is not going to have her powers this season, but maybe Max is. And the reason that this theory has arisen is because we haven't seen anything trailer-wise that shows 11 even remotely using her powers. All we have seen, and all I have seen episode-wise too, is that she does not have her powers anymore. But one of the things we do see in the trailer is at one point, Max is levitating in front of Billy's grave. Now, what I can say about that is that theory could be debunked. And the reason being because we've already seen Chrissy levitate off the ground when she was in the ghost-like state with Vecna. And we see another character in a very similar situation in episode 2. So there is no guarantee that Max levitating, from the evidence we have so far, is a good thing. Because I don't think it is. At this point, nothing has spelt that if you're levitating, that's a great thing for you. So very curious as to what this will bring. That's a big question. I think everybody's wondering is what has become of Eleven's powers. Another big question: how is Joyce going to find Hopper? What is the plan between Joyce and Murray? And we begin to actually dive into it a little bit once we get into episode 2, and we will hit that very shortly. But I'm very curious as to where that storyline is going to go. And my big question is: are we going to see Hopper and Joyce get reunited this season at all? Or will we see it in part 2? Will we see it in part 1? Will we see it in season 5? Because my theory, obviously, I don't know where things are going yet, but my big theory here is we know season 5 is going to be the last season. The Duffer Brothers have confirmed that several times. They said we're not going to go past 5. So I'm thinking that this Vecna character is going to be the end-all be-all for our characters. And I believe that at the end of 4, at the end of episode 9, it is not going to end in a pretty way like it normally does. I don't think we're going to get everything wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow like we normally do. Seasons 1 through 3, everything ended perfectly. Our characters, went their merry way. I think this season they're going to end in a very downer type of way, and it's going to be a very to be continued. How can our characters possibly survive what they've been through, all to bring us to the climactic battle for season 5. That's just a theory. I don't know for certain about that, but I do wonder if that theory is true, if that could also lead us to maybe not seeing the reuniting of Hopper and Joyce and Murray and 11. As much as we would all love that reuniting, I just don't see it happening. Or if we do see it, it will be the quickest sort of maybe it'll be a tease. It might not even be a full-on reveal. Who knows? Some other things to take a look at. Mike and Dustin and Lucas, where are these relationships going to go? Because, we've already seen the tension begin to build here with Mike and Dustin went to the Hellfire Club, and because Lucas could not be there, they went and got his sister involved. And I mean, great on them. It's what we wanted. But I don't necessarily think that's what Lucas wanted. And there's a moment, you can see a moment where he sees her coming out with them out of the Hellfire Club. And it's almost like a hurt sort of moment, because it's like, wow, they didn't go to his game and see him win. And instead they sort of replaced him with his sister, which, depending on how you look at it, you're either rooting for them or you're rooting for Lucas. And, there's a lot of different ways that you can sort of look at that coin. To me, I think they did the right thing because, like I said, Lucas is being a jerk right now, and I'm not very happy with him pulling his same old shenanigans that he has done. So a lot of interesting things to unpack here, a lot of interesting avenues we're going to go down. I'm curious about how Chrissy's past is going to come into the foreground. Like I said, I think that'll be something very interesting that I hope we get to sort of dive into and find out what the significance behind the way she died was and the visions that she was seeing. I want some more substance to that. I want some more meat and potatoes, if you will. I feel like there's a lot to unpack in that, just that little character alone. She was such a sweet character. I was rooting from her from the beginning. In fact, I was really hoping she was going to become like the regular and sort of join the crew. And I was very like, no way she died. And I couldn't believe they would just, slaughter her right there, end of episode 1. So it's very clear that this is going to be a rough season for a lot of people. One of the final things I want to mention before we move on to episode 2 is the grandfather clock, which has been seen by Chrissy, and it has been seen. I'm not sure if it's been seen by Max yet. I can't recall exactly, but I want to say Max may have seen it once too. But this grandfather clock is sort of here. There's no explanation to what it is. We know from the trailer that it's got something to do with Victor Creel and Creel House. but we don't know anything yet from these first 2 episodes. So there's no telling where this might go. I'm very curious, though, how this will work. I do think from this first episode already that it is definitely going to be a time traveling season. Time travel is going to be an element 110%. I don't even doubt it for a second. Reason being, one of Eleven's first lines talks about time and how time moves in different ways for different people depending on what you're doing. And it's great because she even says something along the lines of, if you think about it, we are all time travelers. So I think that was like the Duffer Brothers going ahead and going, okay, guys, time travel's here. It's happening. You've speculated on it. Now we're going to give you, like, this is our way of saying, yes, time travel is going to be a big selling point in this season. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. I'm curious to see what happens there. So just real quick before we move into episode 2, our returning characters, because we didn't really make that known so much. We've got Winona Ryder returning as Joyce Byers. We have Millie Bobby Brown returning as Eleven, and also to the public eye, she is going by Jane Hopper, daughter of Jim Hopper. We have Finn Wolfhard returning as Mike Wheeler, Gaten Matarazzo as Dustin Henderson, Caleb McLaughlin as Lucas Sinclair, Noah Schnapp as Will Byers, Sadie Sink as Max Mayfield, Natalia Dyer as Nancy Wheeler, Charlie Heaton as Jonathan Byers, Joe Keery as Steve Harrington, Maya Hawke as Robin Buckley, Brett Gelman as Murray Bowman, Priya Ferguson as Erica Sinclair, Matthew Modine as Martin Brenner, and Paul Reiser as Sam Owens. And there is one more who's a returning character, but technically he does not return in episode 1. He does return in episode 2. I'll go ahead and say it now because we're going to talk about it. David Harbour is back as Jim Hopper. Everyone knows Hopper is alive, or at least we as the viewers do. Some of the other new characters that we do get to meet: Miss Kelly, Regina Ting Chen. She's the guidance counselor. I'm not sure how big of a character she's going to be, but to me, it seemed pretty important to list her, so I think she's going to be an interesting character to play with this season. There's a character named Vicky, played by Amy Beth McNulty. There's a character named Lieutenant Colonel Sullivan, played by Sherman Augustus. Character named Dimitri, and I'm going to screw up this name already, I know it, played by Tom Walashiha. I'm assuming it's Russian. And then we have Victor Krill, the old version being played by Robert England, and the young version being played by Kevin L. Johnson. Some of these characters, as I said, we have not met just yet, but we are getting there. I can feel it. Great things are about to happen. All right, we're going to take a short break, and then we are going to jump in to episode 2 of Stranger Things 4. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for more content to listen to? Check out our friends at the New Age Philosophers podcast, featuring our very own co-host, Brooke. Join them as they discuss topics ranging from philosophy, cryptids, conspiracies, and so much more. No topic is off the table. Just remember to keep an open mind, keep discussing, and don't stop thinking. If you're looking for other interesting content, be sure to give our friends at Gather by the Ghostlight a visit. A theatrical experience podcast. Join them as they gather and read stories from a variety of genres around the Ghostlight, your personal campfire. No matter what you are looking for, both are sure to provide you a fun, informative, and entertaining experience. Check them out today and let them know the Terror Talks sent you.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Before the break, we were talking all about episode 1 of Stranger Things 4, The Hellfire Club. And now we're going to jump into episode 2. Episode 2 is Vecna's Curse. This episode was directed and written by the Duffer Brothers as well. So already 2 episodes that they have taken the helm on. So here we go. Hopper is revealed to have survived the explosion underneath Starcourt Mall, where he was captured by Russian soldiers and sent to a prison camp in Kamchatka. Joyce and Murray call the phone number posted on the note she was sent and speak to a Russian man calling himself Enzo, whom they deduce is Hopper's prison guard that he likely bribed. Enzo has them deliver a $40,000 ransom to his contact in Alaska. Mike flies to California to visit Eleven, where he and Will witness her being bullied by her classmate Angela. Eleven retaliates by striking Angela in the face. Max tells Dustin she saw Eddie run away the night Chrissy died. Along with Robin and Steve, they locate the traumatized Eddie and explain to him the existence of the Upside Down. Eddie and Dustin identify the entity that killed Chrissy as Vecna. Nancy and her fellow student reporter Fred investigate Chrissy's death. Eddie's uncle tells Nancy he believes the killer is Victor Creel, a Hawkins resident who was institutionalized after allegedly murdering his family decades prior. Fred is lured into the woods by visions similar to Chrissy's before Vecna murders him. Again, a lot to unpack in this episode. Let's work backwards a little bit, and let's start with the most obvious. We have another new character, Fred Benson. Wow. Freddie Benson, iCarly. I'm sorry, not a very original name. That's just, okay. I didn't notice that before. He's played by Logan Riley Bruner. So Fred sort of serves as the Argyle to Joseph. He's sort of the Argyle to Nancy. So Nancy and Fred have this sort of yin and yang sort of deal because they're both working for the reporter. They're both reporting. I don't know what exactly they're reporting for, but they're both student reporters. And so they're working together and they have a lot of venting. We see a lot of sort of back and forth between her and Fred, Nancy and Fred, as well as Jonathan and Argyle, which sort of brings about this lover's quarrel that Nancy and Jonathan are having, which is actually kind of funny. It's a great moment. We get some great comedy to sort of jump in and overshadow some of the darkness. So that's a great thing. I'm glad we get that. But so, you know, right off the bat, we see this great character. He's introduced in such a nice way. And then by the end of the episode, he is dead in the same way that Chrissy dies. But what's interesting is the thing that's haunting him are visions of a car crash that we believe, as far as we can tell, he must have caused, or at the very least, he survived and everyone else died in the crash. Again, part of his past that has not been expounded upon yet. I'm hoping we get some backstory to that. But it's very interesting that Vecna uses these past traumas, if you will, to get to his victims. So this is a very interesting way of luring them in. And really, if you think about it, spells danger for a lot of our favorite characters. And actually might point to part of the reason we do see Max levitating above Billy's grave, because she's got some pretty intense trauma herself from, you know, witnessing Billy die, and she blames herself for it, I'm sure. So she's got some resentment, some things being harbored inside that could spell some danger for her. I'm honestly a little worried about Maxine's character, or Max, however you want to call her. You know, that could spell some danger there, but we don't know. You know, again, we don't know what Vecna is, what he wants, anything like that. I'm thinking she probably doesn't die, because at one point we see her in the Upside Down with him. If you watched the trailer very closely, there was a moment where she was in the Upside Down running away from him. So I'm thinking they must find a way to keep her from dying and escaping Vecna. So that's a great thing. So in the beginning of this episode, this one focused a lot more on the Hopper storyline. We got to see a lot more. What was very interesting, the theories that came in when Hopper was quote unquote dead. And then we heard about, no, not the American, and instantly the theories rushed in. Thank God he's alive. I'm so happy about that. But all of our theories were wrong. You know, it looked like he jumped through the portal. At least that's what we saw. Apparently all he did was jump down below. So good on him for jumping in such a way that he did not get obliterated and turned to dust. I don't know how. It sort of defies the logic we were taught, but somehow he survived the blast, and it wasn't by jumping through the upside down. As far as I could tell, he didn't jump through the portal. But then again, I don't know. Maybe that portal is a direct link to Russia or something of that nature. I'm not sure. But wherever he came out, wherever he jumped to avoid the blast, Russian soldiers surrounded him, and he knew he was in a bad spot. And we saw a lot of torture happening to him. People asking him who he works for. Lots of very brutal things to watch our beloved Hopper go through. We saw him get sent to this horrible prison camp, Kamchatka, which one of the Russian soldiers actually says something along the lines of, "I just sent him to hell," basically. And so it's like, okay, so this is going to be a rough season for Hopper. And we've already seen through some trailers that it's going to be a rough one. Obviously at some point he's fighting a Demogorgon. So there's not a lot of hope right now for this character. But we can clearly tell that he managed to do some great things by bribing the officer to get word back to Joyce and everybody else. Of course, right now all we have is Joyce and Murray. And this is a great little storyline that they've got. They're like the side quests. So it's kind of how like season 3, everything got divided into little side quests. We sort of get to see that again here with this season as well. And it's fabulous. It's such a great combo. I love the dynamic of Murray and Joyce together. They're so funny. And just watching like Murray, he's drinking his vodka or whatever he can find. He shows up at Joyce's house once she tells him about the note, and like he flies out immediately. It's a great little thing that's going on. And we get to meet this character called Enzo, who all we know about him is he is the prison guard for Hopper. Now, we want to know more about him, but we don't know, what we want to know, basically. Is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Is he somebody who's going to give us some trouble down the way? We don't know. Hopefully, this is another thing that's going to get revealed, because he seems like he's willing to help. And Joyce certainly doesn't waste any time about going to get that $40,000 ransom. Like, she straight up looks at Murray like, "I'm going to the bank and I'm going to Alaska. Are you coming or not?" And he's like, "Yep, here we're going, I guess." So clearly, Joyce has bought into this idea that there is the slightest chance that Hopper might be alive. So that's a good thing. And they both agree that bribing a guard certainly sounds like the type of thing that Jim Hopper would do. So I'm very glad they have their hope back for the possibility here, and I'm curious to see where this little side quest adventure goes. We've already seen from the trailer, there's a shot of Murray and Joyce in an airplane together. So we're clearly going globetrotting on this season for everybody involved. As we said, Mike has come to California. I thought he came in episode 1. I guess episode 2 is actually when he got there. But he's in California now. As I said, we've got the sort of trio issue, third wheel sort of deal happening where Will is feeling very neglected, and it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And I'm curious to see where that goes. As I said, Angela is this awful, awful bully who just pisses me off to no end. And I feel so bad for 11 because at one point in episode 1, she tries to use her powers on Angela and literally just turns into basically just screaming at her. So that quickly gets used against her. Well, 11, like I said, lied to Mike in her letters and said that she's got all these friends and says that Angela is actually her friend. And so at the skating rink that they go to, Angela shows up. And what does Angela do? Decides to embarrass Elle by putting her in the middle of the skating rink with her and having them all, like, everybody starts circling her, and Mike and Will are just sort of watching. And this is where Will breaks the news to Mike that 11's been lying to you. Of course, Mike doesn't believe it because we got to have some conflict with these characters. And it turns into this whole thing. Will basically ends up saying, I've been third wheeling all day. And it turns into this whole thing. Well, by the end of it all, Elle gets embarrassed and goes and hides somewhere. Will and Mike are looking everywhere for her. Well, she's hiding in a closet and then decides to come out. And what does she do? Quite possibly, in my opinion, one of the most badass moments ever for 11. One of my favorite moments, and I don't care what type of pain she inflicted on Angela. I cheered for this because it was fantastic. She goes in the same, so earlier when she tries to use her power, she goes, "Hey, Angela," and then tries to use her powers on her, doesn't work. Well, this time she goes, "Hey, Angela," takes her roller skate and bashes Angela right between her eyes, right at the top of her nose. And I was like, "You do it, girl. I'm fine. I don't care." This was a great moment. It's not going to end well for you later, I'm afraid. But I think if I know what's going to happen, I think I have a good idea where it's going to go. And I'll just share it because by the time episode 3 comes out, then I'll probably know. I honestly think she's going to get reprimanded for bashing the ever-living crap out of Angela's face. But I think they're going to put in a couple calls to Sam Owens, Dr. Sam Owens, and he's going to take care of everything. Because we did see in the trailer that he was the one who relocated everybody to California. So I think he's going to come in and he's just going to put a Band-Aid on it, if you will. Because that's what he does. That's what he did in season 2. They had to put a Band-Aid on the problem caused at Hawkins' lab. So I really think that it's going to be just fine for her. Even though if you read the description of episode 3, it says that 11 faces serious repercussions for her actions. I don't think they're going to be that serious. And quite frankly, Angela had it coming all day long. She deserved what she got, if you ask me. But like I said, we'll see. So yeah, lots happening in this episode. The fantastic little group we have of Max and Dustin, they go off to find Robin and Angela, who are, or I'm sorry, not Robin and Angela, Robin and Steve, who are working at a video store now, and they're a fabulous couple. Even though they're not a couple, they're like wingman sort of deal, and I love it. Robin and Steve have this awesome dynamic too, so I'm so glad to see that carry through. And so the four of them work together to go find Eddie, who is doesn't even know what to do with himself right now because he just witnessed this just absolutely bizarre death that nobody can explain. So it's all sorts of crazy. Episode 2, like I said, ends in a huge way with Fred being murdered. So that's 2 episodes back to back of someone getting murdered. And it definitely, again, leads to this big question of who is Vecna and what is Vecna. And, you know, some people said that maybe Vecna is the Mind Flayer. I don't think he's the Mind Flayer. I think he's something much worse than the Mind Flayer. I almost wonder if he's like the head honcho of the Upside Down, like he's the guy in charge, and you know, sent the Mind Flayer to do his bidding at one point, and we clearly see how that went. It did not go well for the Mind Flayer because the Mind Flayer is now gone. You know, lots of questions. I want to know who this Enzo character is. I want to know how is he going to treat our characters when he meets them. Is he going to follow through on his word if, you know, Joyce happens to magically get the $40,000? And maybe that's how Dr. Sam Owens comes in. Maybe he comes in and is like, "Here, here's 40,000. Let's make it happen." There's so many different directions this could go. I love the subtle mention in this episode from Eddie's uncle mentioning Victor Creel, and you know, it's so interesting. He suggests that, oh well, what if Victor Creel broke out and that's who, you know, killed these kids? And at the time, he only knows about the one, hasn't heard about Fred's death yet. But trust me, that's coming. I guarantee it. So that's an interesting theory that Victor Creel could be the killer, but I don't think it's accurate. But it sort of lines up, and obviously he's going to be an important part there's going to be something to do with Victor Creel and his house. I almost wonder if maybe the story is going to be like Vecna possessed Victor Creel to kill his family, because we've got this interesting signature from what we've heard so far that Victor Creel cut the people's eyes out after he killed them, and that seems to be the path that Vecna's following. So I'm wondering if maybe that could be the connection, almost a possession sort of thing. Very curious, lots of big questions, lots to find out in the coming episodes. So unfortunately, we don't get a whole lot of answers this early on. I have heard some people say that, it's a slow burning fire. I personally don't feel that way about it. I feel like we're, banging on all four cylinders already. We've got some great, alliances, if you will, already building up, the fantastic little side quests and duos. This is clearly going to be a very expansive season. I can tell we're going to see a lot of different characters. One character I forgot to mention when we talked about episode 1 is, I believe we're going to see the character Susie, who appeared ever so briefly in season 3, at the very last episode of season 3 of Stranger Things. I believe we're going to see her make a big reappearance this season. I don't know how major, because I could not find her name mentioned anywhere, but I think she's going to be an important character this season, or if not, she may just be a minor character who ends up having an important task at some point, kind of how she did in season 3. But for those of you who don't remember, Susie is Dustin's girlfriend, and it is one of the greatest little love stories ever. Like, it is so cute, and I'm here for it all day long. So Susie is played by Gabriella Pizzolo. So we will see if she is going to make her fabulous major return, because we've already seen her in episode 1. So we will just have to wait and see. But that's all we've got so far for episodes 1 and 2. Lots of twists and turns happening already. Lots of people battling with some pretty intense emotions, some pretty intense deaths already. Like, it is a crazy season already. Very curious to see the direction that we are going to be taken. From what I've read, this is a super horror-based season, so I'm excited for that. I love horror, and we love horror. That's what we talk about on this channel. So I'm very curious to see how the horror amps up, see just how much more creepy this show can get. I'm excited to see, get our answers to who is Vecna, what is Vecna, find out what the connection is between the people that have died. Is there a connection? Is there any reason that, was it randomized? Was there a reason they both happened to die? Lots of boiling questions at the surface. And I, for one, am very excited and ready to see what we are going to get. But that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Terror Talks. We hope you enjoyed it. If you like this type of episode where we break down shows episode by episode, let us know. Leave us a like, comment, all that good stuff. You can subscribe. You can mail us directly at theterrortalks@gmail.com. We would absolutely love to hear from you guys. Be sure to go subscribe to us on all of our listening places. We've got them all listed down in the description below, as well as our website, all of our social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Libsyn, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we're on all of it. We're everywhere. Please, please, please give us some love, like, comment, subscribe. Tell your friends about us. Share us on your page. We love to hear from you guys. We'd love to get some more followers. So be sure to tune in next time. Thank you guys so much for listening. We couldn't do it without you. You are what makes the show possible. If I can give a quick plug, please go check out our friends over at the Rush of Fear podcast, as well as the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast. They talk about all things Universal Studios Orlando is the unofficial Universal Orlando podcast, and then the Rush of Fear does all things Halloween Horror Nights and horror related. And so we definitely have some close ties with them. Definitely want to give them a plug because we talk about horror nights over here on the channel as well. So be sure to go give them some love. Check them out. You can also check out the Theme Park Duo podcast, who covers all sorts of theme park stuff over on the West Coast, over in California, and they actually talk about Halloween Horror Nights over there in California's Universal Studios. So be sure to go check all of them out, give them some love, let them know that the Terror Talk sent you. But that is going to do it for us today on this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in with us, and please come back. Please tell your friends about us. Share, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. We could not do it without you. You are what makes the show what it is. So thank you guys so much. My name has been Jeremy, and we hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Terror Talks. So until next time, be safe out there. Don't text and drive, and be excellent to each other. We'll see you in the fog.